A succinct diagnosis of the African challenge by President Paul Kagami. Under President Kagami, Rwanda has risen from a country ravaged by genocide when 800,000 people were slaughtered just 29 years ago to become a country now ranked first on the continent and amongst the top 10 fastest growing economies in the world pre and post COVID-19, according to the African Development Bank. His Rwandan Patriotic Front Party, RPF, was created by a group of Rwandese in exile who fought to end the genocide. This week, the party turns 35. At an international conference to mark the anniversary, the party focused exclusively on policy and not politics, inviting international experts to discuss the African problem and propose solutions. What was fascinating was how the international panel of experts openly challenged President Kagami at his own party conference in a healthy exchange of ideas. It started when the former president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Donald Kaberuka, suggested that Africa's challenge was mainly failure to properly diagnose our problems and apply the right solutions.
Before you answer how, you have to answer what. And I'm not even sure that you have answered the what. So let me give you an example. So we're now talking about the energy transition, which we depend a lot on a number of minerals. Maybe there are 3 or 4, I think. And are you certain that countries owning those minerals are not going to make the mistake which countries exporting oil and gas have not made? I'm not sure about that. So if we're going to say, this is how we do something, but what are you doing in the first place? So, how do I put this to you? Every single country in Africa I visited, and I visited all of them except one, has a strategy, 30-year strategy, 40-year strategy, all right? You are right, where they fail is on implementation. But often it is because the what itself has not been well thought out. All right? So it is important to answer how, but you must also answer what are you going to do. I'm not certain that in many countries, the what has been answered.
President Kagami, in his front row seat, raised his hand, appealed to speak, and disagreed.
We've been places, all of us, and we've been in search of what is it that we can do in Africa to put the transformation journey on track as we wish to. So actually the problem which Donald talked about also is that implementation. It's actually the main issue. You said that you are not saying that there are no implementation issues. Actually, this is the problem. Forget about the how or the what. The how and the what have been answered by you even now on the sitting there in the panel. They have been answered before, several times, for years. When it comes to doing things, we either do nothing or do the wrong things.
The expert panel stood their ground. Professor at Harvard University, Dr. Celestine Monga, insisted their position on the matter was the right one.
I would still dare say that I'm on the side of Dr. Kaberuka on this one, simply because, yes, we've seen solutions, we've heard ideas at conferences, but many times we also have wrong ideas in the books, and we implement the wrong ideas. So I still think that in some questions, the what is still relevant. What should we do? What should we not do? I see in many African countries, I was very happy among the many nice jobs that I had. One of the most meaningful was to be Chief Economist, Vice President of the African Development Bank, because it was for me really the opportunity to serve the continent. I had bigger jobs before that, but that one was so far to me the most meaningful. And I could tell you, Mr. President, that I had interaction with a lot of ministers and prime ministers and presidents who believe in the wrong ideas. So I think that the what, in some situations, is still relevant.
President Kagami will not give in, making another comeback, calling out African countries for either doing nothing about their problems or doing the wrong things.
Because we're asking the what of two kinds. What do we have to do ourselves? Rwanda, the continent. And then there is the what that has been answered in other places by other people to get to where they are that we want to be. So, of course, countries have different contexts. But this does not preclude the point I'm trying to make. Saying, then you learn from the experience of other places who have answered the what in their context. That brings you closer to understand the what in your context.
In an apparent reference to Ghana, the only country in West Africa to have formally applied to the IMF for a bailout, the former president of AFDB used Ghana as an example to support President Kagami's point.
That, for example, a country in West Africa, please no names, which was the first one to go to the IMF and begin general economic reforms, is back to the IMF today. Please, no names. Why? A combination of domestic indiscipline, macroeconomic indiscipline, and these external shocks. So as a result, they have lost what I call political space, fiscal space, policy space. The decisions they're now implementing are not their decisions. Why? Because during the days when things were very good, they did all the wrong things. They ticked all the wrong boxes. Massive borrowing, for example, massive spending, huge levels of the deficit, without building the resilience for when the days will be difficult. I can think now of about 14 countries in Africa who are in that phase. So the first thing I think our message we're passing here is that restoring that degree of economic independence begins by economic discipline.
Ghana's fall from economic grace to grass is being noticed across the continent. But one thing became obvious to me. This was a Rwandan governing party marking its 35th anniversary, and yet their first order of business was to assemble an international expert panel to talk policy. Experts not fazed by a partisan audience, extremely disciplined in their tolerance, I must add, who dared to challenge the president at his own party conference. If only the NDC and the MPP can adopt this policy over politics approach, Ghana may well be on its way back to economic grace.